Good evening. Welcome to the October 11th Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you're with us tonight, whether here or on TV. As is our custom, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose, Commissioner Wallace,
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Colavani,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover.
Here.
Nice to see everyone this evening. We have item 3 on our agenda tonight. We have a couple of proclamations. The first concerns Fire Prevention Week. Whereas the National Fire Protection Association named the second week of October as Fire Prevention Week in commemoration of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. And whereas according to the National Archives and Records Administration's Library Information Center, Fire Prevention Week is the longest-running public health and safety observance on record, and the President of the United States has signed a proclamation declaring a national observance during that week every year since 1925. Whereas home fires killed nearly 3,800 people in the United States in 2021, according to the National Fire Protection Association, and fire departments in the United States responded to over 346,800 home fires. Whereas the Downers Grove Fire Department sponsors an annual fire prevention program, whereas the Downers Grove Fire Department's primary concern and interest is the 24/7, 365 safety and protection of life and property in the village of Downers Grove. Whereas the Downers Grove Fire Department renders a vital public safety and prevention service in the village of Downers Grove through education, inspection, drills, and plan reviews, responding to nearly 7,000 calls for service each year. Whereas the theme of the 2022 Fire Prevention Week is Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape, effectively serves to remind us it is important to learn about simple but important actions that can be taken to keep yourself and everyone around you safe from home fires. Whereas the observance of Fire Prevention Week provides an excellent opportunity for individuals to make sure their smoke and CO2 alarms meet the needs of all their family members, including those with sensory or physical disabilities, and to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim the week of October 9th through 15th, 2022 to be Fire Prevention Week in the Village of Downers Grove, and encourage all residents to educate themselves on fire prevention, fire safety, and family emergency escape planning, and to support the many public safety education activities and efforts of the Downers Grove Fire Department. Dated this 11th day of October 2022 at Downers Grove, Illinois. And we have a couple members of our fire department here tonight. I'd like to pass this off.
Good evening, Mayor Barnett, Village Council members. Thank you for the Fire Prevention Week proclamation. Last year, our message was, learn the sounds of fire safety, whether it be a smoke detector, a carbon monoxide detector, or the use of a bed shaker for the hearing impaired. When the device is activated, we need to take action. You must have a plan. Fire is fast. There is little time to escape. And fire is hot, and heat is more threatening than flames. This year, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of Fire Prevention Week, and our campaign for 2022 is Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape. Develop a plan for everyone in your home, children, older adults, and people with disabilities. People with disabilities may need your assistance. In a fire, mere seconds can make a difference. Fire won't wait, so plan your escape. Tomorrow, October 12th, will be hosting our night at the Firehouse at Station 105, located at 6701 Main Street, starting at 6:30 p.m. We'll have many activities for both children and adults. I would also like to invite everyone to observe the silent parade that will take place on Friday at 7 o'clock. The silent parade will start in Hinsdale and travel west on Maple Avenue through Downers Grove to Lisle. This is an observance of those that have lost their lives as a result of fire. Thank you, and be safe.
Thank you, Chief. Another proclamation for October. This is Arts Month, Dupage. Whereas the arts are the embodiment of all things beautiful, emotional, and entertaining in the world, an ever-present and enduring, yet growing and evolving record and reflection of the human experience, defining personal, local, and national achievements and challenges. Whereas the arts have often shed light, focus, and awareness on the most vulnerable of society or those issues which bind us in the moment. Whereas through arts we explore what it means to be human, illuminate our inner lives, enrich our emotional world, and teach compassion. Whereas art has the power to facilitate social interactions and raise mutual understanding of those experiences that make us unique and bring people and ideas together. Whereas art has time and again proven a comfort in crisis, an outlet in adversity, and a bridge to peace. Whereas the month of October has been recognized as Arts Dupage Month by Arts Dupage and the arts and cultural organizations in all of the communities within Dupage County. And whereas the arts enhance every aspect of life in Downers Grove, playing a unique and intrinsically valuable role in the lives of our residents. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim October 2022 as Arts Dupage Month and call upon all citizens to seek, engage, celebrate, and promote the arts in the Village of Downers Grove. Dated this 11th day of October 2022, Downers Grove, Illinois. The Arts Dupage people could not be with us tonight. Is there... Oh, I didn't notice you were there, so I'm sorry. Come on down. There's a group of folks from the art department, correct? Yeah. There we go. In town who work for arts. Thank you.
National Arts and Humanities Month in October encourages everyone to appreciate art and explore the diverse cultures around us. It is the largest celebration of arts and cultures in the United States, and we urge everyone to reflect on how art enriches our lives. From music to literature, paintings to photography, as John Keating said in the movie Dead Poets Society, quote, medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. Thanks again, sir.
Thank you. Just like that, we're on to item 4. Is there a motion concerning minutes of previous council meetings?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the meeting minutes from October 4th as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The 2 passes unanimously. Before we move on to our active agenda tonight, a couple of comments concerning public comments at our meetings. We've had a couple meetings where we lost sight of some basic decorum and mutual respect, and so we're counting on everyone here to not let that happen again. If you've been here the last couple weeks, you've heard this, but it's a good reminder, and it's important that we all agree to move forward together. Public comment portions of our agenda are important and valued parts of each council meeting. There are provisions in the agenda for such input at each active or first reading agenda item, and later on items not specific to an active or first reading under the public comments portion. Beyond tonight's meeting, there are a variety of additional opportunities to engage council members, including our e-remark system, the CRC system, coffee with the council, direct email, or by phone. and every one of your council members spends time in person off this dais, making themselves available to residents and businesses across the community. Those one-on-one conversations are often the most valuable. The comment opportunities tonight are intentional parts of a structured meeting. They offer an opportunity to deliver comments to the council. Please remember, it is not a debate. It is not an open and question and answer session. Applause or heckling at other commentators is not acceptable, whether it be for something said from the dais or a comment delivered to the council. Your council is listening, taking notes, considering what is said. Often, and rightly, sometimes needed to reflect on the comments that are presented. That same consideration is expected of everyone in the room. Applause or heckling just diminishes the effect of the comments and diminishes everyone's ability to consider them. Importantly, the opportunity to address the council is not an opportunity to name call, accuse others of ill will, or debate one another. And if we can't follow the rules, if we can't exhibit some basic decorum and respect for each other, we'll stop the meeting. If you plan to speak, please keep the following in mind. Please state your name for the record, address your comments to me as the chair of the meeting. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Avoid repeating what others have already said. Please keep your comments to one visit to the podium per subject. Keep your comments, and remember that your comments are most effective when they focus on subjects within the governance of the Village of Downers Grove. Finally, if you forget to mention something or additional conversation brings up a new idea, please hold that until after the meeting and use one of the other methods, email, CRC, or phone, to contact us as needed, or bring that new comment to our next meeting. With that, we are on to item 6 on our agenda tonight. This is the active agenda portion of the meeting. These are subjects we have considered at least once before, sometimes many times before, and on which we do plan to take action tonight. Is there a motion concerning an amendment to PUD 18?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance approving an amendment to Plan Unit Development Number 18 to permit construction of a restaurant with a drive-through and retail building at 7251 and 7261 Lamont Road as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the audience on this item? Comments or questions from the council? Okay, as a reminder, this is an outlot development in the northeast corner of 75th and Lamont Road, and there are a couple of related issues. Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Cullivaney?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning a final plat of subdivision at 7251 and 7261 Lamont Road?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt a resolution approving a final plat of subdivision with an exception for 7251 and 7261 Lamont Road as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the audience on this item? Comments or questions from the council? Chris?
Yeah, I would just like to thank the developer for hearing some of the suggestions that the council brought forth in terms of the south and north facade, and as well as the pedestrian connection. I think it was a appreciated change, and I look forward to this building being filled with a new couple businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Rose, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Cullivaney?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That too passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning housing revenue bonds?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the amendment of the Village of Downers Grove, Dupage County, Illinois, multifamily housing revenue bond, Downers Grove Supportive Living Facility, Series 2014, originally issued in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $20,114,920 in connection therewith, the execution and delivery of such amended bond and related matters as presented.
Second.
Comments or questions from the audience on this one? Comments or questions from the council? Just as a reminder for those who might be hearing this the first time, this is a procedural issue. It does not change any indebtedness to for the village, on behalf of the village, but it does allow one of our participating community members to do some refinancing, which is generally a good thing. Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Kolovany,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously as well. With that, we are on to item 7, our first reading portion of our meeting. This portion of the meeting is where we discuss items sometimes for the first time, sometimes for the second or third time, but these are all items on which we do not plan to take formal action tonight. So with that, I'll hand it over to our staff team.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. There are 4 items on tonight's first reading agenda, 2 topics. The first 3 items concern a development proposal on Main Street, and here to provide background information on this petition is our planning manager, Jason Zawilla.
Thank you, Manager Fieldman. Good evening, Mayor and council members. So as noted with the agenda item, the petitioner is requesting approval of a special use, planning developments, and rezoning from DB to DB PUD to permit the construction of a 4-story mixed-use building with commercial space on the ground floor and 21 residential units on the 3 floors above. Just to get familiar with the location, if you see on the screen in front of you, this is located on the eastern side of Main Street, just south of Franklin. These are the 3 parcels that are subject to the request with the addresses of 4915, 4919, and 4923 Main Streets. And here is an image of the proposed front elevation. Before I get into the specifics of the project, I would like to go over a brief history of zoning changes that have occurred in the downtown and how it relates to the subject property, including the public outreach efforts. So starting back in 2005, this is a time when the downtown properties were zoned B2. As part of that process, there was multiple public meetings and the zoning was changed to the DB, the Downtown Business District. Moving forward a couple of years is when the village took on the comprehensive plan updates between the years of 2009 and 2011. The comprehensive plan process for that occurred over 20 public meetings. This process resulted in specific recommendations for the downtown and concepts for developments, which included the idea of mixed-use buildings and encouragement of transit-oriented design in the downtown. Then approximately 5 years later, an update to the comprehensive plan occurred, and specifically the downtown was reviewed again. This process occurred over nearly 20 public meetings with 4 specific meetings that went over the downtown framework, which would set up the guidance for updating the zoning regulations and potential rezonings. This was heavily communicated with the public, and this is an example of a project page that was used during the time of the project. With direction from Village Council, an additional 7 public meetings were held, which would finalize modifications to the zoning ordinance for downtown zoning and included the creation of a downtown core zoning district. And then we arrive at the last phase of this project where certain properties were rezoned. First of which, several properties in the center of downtown were rezoned to that downtown core downtown core district that was created as part of the previous efforts. Also, as part of this process, 3 specific areas were looked at for the potential rezoning to downtown transition. On the map, if you can see on the left was the zoning at the time, and on the right, circled in yellow, are properties that were rezoned to downtown transition. The third set of parcels that was looked at was at the north part of the downtown. The Village Council decided that the subject property was to remain DB, and that is the underlining zoning designation for the property. Staff notes this because the village confirmed that the existing zoning should remain Downtown Business District as a result of this process. So moving on to the project itself, I first would like to talk about setbacks and how it relates to this project. This slide highlights the required setbacks for the project. When adjacent to the residential, certain setbacks are required, and this is highlighted on the slide in brown. So again, the area in brown are the required setbacks based off the proposed building height for this project. When adjacent to DB, there is no setback, so the resulting area, the area you see in red, is required to not have any setbacks, interior setbacks, because the properties to the south and the immediate north on this portion of the parcel are zoned DB. Now I'm going to go to the project itself. Since the last Plan Commission meeting, the petitioner further modified the plan to remove all of the above ground portion of the building out of the interior and rear setbacks as illustrated in the screen. So what you see on the screen is the underground parking garage. And the deviations being requested for this project are for the interior setback, so this is the portion of the property to the south, and from the rear for those adjacent R5 properties. With this diagram, we overlaid the setbacks again, and you can see the portions of the underground parking garage that are within that setback. Then, again, the remaining area, as you saw in the preceding slide, this is the area that can be built with a building, and that's where the location of the mixed-use building. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this, the building was modified. I'm going to overlay again the required setbacks for the above ground and the building itself. And this is where the applicants removed a portion of the building that's in front of you this evening. So I'm going to go over a couple of different elements of the site plan again. This is where you see with the conditions of the approval, and since Plan Commission, the applicant has provided an 8-foot privacy fence, again, a condition of the approval. This is where access into the building is being provided, and this is reducing the 3 access points that are located now on the subject property into 1, and this is again for the underground parking garage where the residential units will have parking. This is a diagram that shows the pedestrian connections to the building. Main Street is the arrows on the left, and then the connections to get to the rear of the building. Now I'm going to draw your attention to the revised elevations. And again, this is the area of the building from what was in front of Plan Commission, where the petitioner removed a portion of the building so that the above ground portion of the building meets the required setbacks. This is another perspective with the proposed 8-foot privacy fence, and this is the area in question again. As referenced in the staff reports, this project meets several aspects of the village's comprehensive plan as noted on the screen, including those recommendations related to transit-oriented developments, the offering of a variety of housing types, and a mixed-use development near a significant activity center. At the August 22nd, 2022 Plan Commission meeting, both staff and the Plan Commission recommended that the approval of the petition as presented to the Village Council. The Plan Commission ultimately found that the proposal is an appropriate use in the district, compatible with the comprehensive plan, and meets all standards for approval. And several members stated that they were supportive for relief needed for underground portion of the building. As noted in the staff report, this again went in front of the Plan Commission on September 12th. The Plan Commission did make a motion to recommend approval, but the motion failed by a 2-5 vote. The dissenting members of the Plan Commission stated that they were still supportive of the relief needed for the underground parking portion, but did not support the relief needed for the above ground portion of the building. As noted previously, the petitioner has further modified the building to remove all of the above ground portion of the building out of the required setbacks. That concludes my presentation. I would like to invite the applicant to come up to just say a couple of words, if you don't mind.
Hello, council and staff. First, I'd like to thank you for your time, interest, and process in our proposed Main Street development. My name is Adam Berry from Barrier Properties, a third-generation developer and resident of Downers Grove. Our family has built and developed properties in and around the Downers Grove area for decades while still owning and maintaining real estate in downtown Downers Grove and the surrounding suburbs. As a local developer owning and operating real estate rooted in our community, we can ensure that the Downers Grove residents that our new development will withstand the test of time. Being a Downers Grove resident and father of 5, it is important for us as a company to develop quality buildings that help create a multi-generational community, and which will help the community thrive for many generations moving forward. Our newly proposed 55-plus apartment home mixed-use development will help ensure this by helping my parents and alike be able to stay in the community. We will do this by creating a middle-class apartment home rental solution in which allows families to stay and live in the neighborhood close to their children and growing families. Council and staff, thank you again for your consideration of our proposed new development, and we are excited to continue our investment within the Downers Grove community.
Thank you, Adam. Don't go far.
Okay.
Process-wise, we're going to take comment from the audience right now,
Okay.
and then at that point, there'll be likely some additional comments or questions from the council, so we'll probably need you back up there.
Okay. Understood.
Okay, are there any comments from the audience on this agenda item?
Good evening, Council. My name is Vincent Barrett. I live at 4921 Highland Avenue, and I'm a taxpayer. And I want to thank you all for your volunteer positions on the board. I know they are volunteer. I also want to thank the staff for all the preparations they do for all these meetings. I've been blessed to be able to live in this town for a lot of years. I'm 71 years old at this point. I'd say I'm second generation. My parents fought to keep the neighborhood that I live in the neighborhood that it is today. And that started back in 1958 or 59. A real estate developer came to town at 4917 Highland Avenue, bought the property in the middle of a residential street on Highland Avenue, wanted to pave the backyard to make it a parking lot. My parents, along with many of the neighbors, probably they got 200 people on a signature or on a petition back then. And back in 1958 and 59, that was a lot of people. And they saved the neighborhood. But they came to this council, all right? And many of those people I've been before this council with are behind me right now, or they're listening on the television. I absolutely oppose what is being proposed for this by this petitioner. Just a little bit of context, because the village planner gave us some context on how the zoning has changed over the years. My parents, along with many other residents in this community, saved the neighborhood on Highland Avenue to be what it is today, many of those years ago. Since I've been living on that street since 1985, there have been at least 2 times when the neighborhood has banded together. One was to stop a restaurant at the corner of Rogers and Highland Avenue. And we got over near 400 signatures from people all over town who were against it because it was ill-planned. There was no consideration for traffic, handling, deliveries. And when I see the petitioner's presentation over the 3 meetings that I've been able to attend, what I see is that there's been, I'm not going to call it short shift. That's probably too aggressive. But I don't see any detail about how they get deliveries done. What I did hear in the meeting was this: well, that would be taken care of, or we covered that. Well, I never heard it, and I've been to 3 different meetings. All right, these are the kinds of things that will set the precedent. The petitioner just talked about, places to live for people for generations to come. Well, the precedent is going to hit us where we live right now, where we pay taxes, where we've raised our families and improved our properties. And this is how the precedent will affect us. The lights are going to come on and go off at different times of the year, depending on the season. And it's going to go on until the cows come home. Those lights are going to be on those balconies, four stories above the ground level, all right? Just feet and yards from our properties. And they're going to shine into our homes, look down on our patios, where our kids are playing, where our parents, are enjoying their years with us. And so I see this as ill-founded and not in the best interest of the community. Also, Main Street is a 2-lane street. Everybody knows this, and there's parking on the street, and it's well-traveled. I just don't know how they're going to bring vehicles in there to supply the restaurant. And the restaurant, that's another thing. I'd like you to consider this. I'm not asking you to raise your hand or comment on it, but as you go home tonight, I'd like you to think about talking to your families about what the petitioner is asking you to do. They're asking you to set a precedent for the other properties on that block. And believe me, if this goes through, this is going to be the first domino, and it's going to decimate this neighborhood. But think about going home to your families and say, guess what? You know what? We love where we live, but you know what I did tonight? As a village council member, I voted to put a 4-story building right in our backyard, right there. And it's going to be there forever. And those lights are going to be shining on us. There's going to be traffic, increased traffic, and we're not going to have the home that we have now. And our property values are going to go down. But I want you to think about approaching your families, because I've talked to my family about it, my adult children, because one day I'm hoping that they're going to inherit the property that my wife and I have. So I'm absolutely opposed to this. And I'd like to take any questions you may have of me.
Thank you. Thanks, Vince.
Nope. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Vince. My name is Robin Tryloff, and I've been a Downers Grove resident for more than 30 years. I, along with others, relayed my concerns about this project to the Plan Commission at its September 12 meeting. At the end of that meeting, the Commission voted against project approval, so I offer my concerns about this project again tonight. Precedent setting. To my knowledge, there are no other examples of a 40-foot building right next to single-family homes in Downers Grove, or for restaurant outdoor seating next to single-family homes in the ways being proposed. So I'm concerned that this proposed project could be setting precedents in these ways. The village has guidelines that are intended to help prevent intensive downtown development from encroaching on stable residential appearance, and this project is inconsistent with the homes surrounding the development. The building massing and height should be proportionate to adjacent buildings. Privacy for homeowners. Outdoor commercial areas like the proposed restaurant should not be 7 feet from a private home's background, especially considering the noise, light, and hours of operation for the restaurant. That, combined with the fact that the proposed building units would have balconies overlooking these private homes in their backyards, means a great deal of privacy loss for the adjacent homes. Stormwater management. While I appreciate that the developer considered this, I'm not convinced, at least by the information I've read, that it has been adequately addressed. Anecdotally, the neighborhood already is experiencing increased water issues. Traffic and parking. It's my understanding that a traffic study has not been completed for north of the tracks, so we don't have recent data on the impact of this proposed project on the already busy area around St. Joe's. The plan would have resident access to the underground garage on the building's north side, the side where St. Joe's school drop-off and pickup happen. Regarding the proposed restaurant, there's insufficient parking on the north side of downtown for another restaurant. Parking in the area is already used by St. Joe's, the Tivoli, Moose Lodge, and the other businesses that are north of the tracks. How likely would these restaurant patrons be to cross the tracks south for parking, or would they simply park on the residential streets? Human scale. The sidewalks along Main Street will be expanded to the inside of the curb by removing parkways and their greenery that enhances walkability and its role on Main Street's visual appeal. While these are my specific concerns about this specific proposal, I would like to ask the council to be sensitive to the sizable portion of the community that wants to retain the village's tree-lined streets and hometown feel. Many of us are concerned about the rush to build so many multi-story mixed-use residences. The term highest and best use is thrown around a lot as the highest goal a project can achieve. But the definition of highest and best use is that use that would produce the highest value for a property, regardless of its actual current use. It's a term that is important for developers because that is their business. But the village is responsible for protecting what is best for the community as a whole. The comprehensive plan is often cited, but just because a project is consistent with the comprehensive plan doesn't mean it should go forward. There are so many other things to be considered. I'm asking for balance. Quality of life also is a critical component of community planning. And these buildings, which are so much larger than human scale, not only do not add ambience, their height and sharp rise from the edge of the sidewalk results in them towering and looming over our daily lives. Has the village decided that Downers Grove is simply a place to live in order to commute to work? Or are we going to capitalize on our village's distinctive qualities to compete for people who want to enjoy a unique quality of life? Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, Joe Burkett. I live in 4904 Highland, just behind the proposed development. I think you all know all this already, but the amendment review and approval criteria for DMC section 281230I in case of new plan unit proposals. There's 7 factors to take into consideration. Again, this is more for everyone else's benefit, not yours. The existing use and zoning of nearby property. This is to give it the PUD development, like to overlay the current zoning that is BD. This is a special approval that's needed by you guys, so this is the special reasons that you're looking at doing this. The existing use and zoning of nearby property. This is adjacent to multiple single-family residences. The extent to which the particular zoning restrictions affect property values. We already have a data point on this. There's a house for sale on our side of the street. It was a cash offer that was made and is now pulled and it's back on the market. So the finances weren't taken into consideration, and I know interest rates have ticked up. You could say that's this, but this is a cash offer, so maybe when they do some diligence that there's going to be a 4-story building immediately behind with no trees blocking it, that might have caused them to pull their offer. The extent to any diminution in value offset by an increase in public health, safety, and welfare. I don't think either or any of those are met, health, safety, and welfare by apartments or restaurants. The suitability of subject property for zoned purposes, that's up for your debate. I'll leave it to you. The length and time the subject property has been vacant as zoned. It's not been vacant. There have been tenants. Value of the community of the proposed use, except for the increase in tax dollars, which there is a benefit, right? But it doesn't offset the impact to the local, immediately local and broader community with traffic, parking, watershed, everything. And then the comprehensive plan. Staff and the applicant have said that this matches the comprehensive plan, and it does as far as mixed use. The comprehensive plan is very adamant about mixed use and developing it, but mixed use is important when it's against another mixed use or in downtown. If they showed the map again, the next closest mixed use area according to this is 500 feet, over 500 feet away. This is not going to be, in the applicant's proposal, it said that it's going to increase street traffic. There is no foot traffic. I live right there. I walk to the Thai restaurant all the time, and I'm the only one on the street. The only other foot traffic that's generated in this is the methadone clinic that's also in that area. So I don't know where this is proposing to do. And the comprehensive plan also says that the resident is the jewel, the neighborhoods are the jewel of of Downers Grove. That surrounding development within the edge neighborhood transition should strive to mitigate any negative impacts, including traffic and parking. There should be transition between downtown core and edge into neighborhoods that surround downtown. Page 32, ensure buffering between residential and commercial uses. Again, a restaurant would be offensive necessarily if there was appropriate parking, but it's an outdoor restaurant in people's backyards, in single-family homes' backyards that have kids. Regardless of location or housing type, residential development or redevelopment should carefully regulated to ensure compatibility with the scale and character of the surrounding and adjacent residential neighborhoods. That's page 36. 38. Multifamily development should be located near significant activity centers. This is close to the train station, but again, this is far enough back. This is 500 feet from the next closest mixed-use site. It's going to end up being, and there's a section there that's not developable. It's too thin. There's nothing you're going to really be put there, so it's not going to be a continuous flow of downtown all the way to this property. It's just going to stand alone as a monolith. In the comprehensive plan, page 139, about cooperation. Comprehensive plan to be successful, it must be based on strong partnership between the village, public agencies, citizens, neighborhood groups, and organizations. We have an online petition. I don't know how much stock you put in those, but we have over 1,300 signatures, and this is just from us putting flyers around the neighborhood, posting on Nextdoor. It's not just the immediate neighbors that are universally 100% against this. There are the larger community that is against this. And I forgot to note at the beginning, I wanted to second something that Vince said, that I know this, you guys are essentially public servants that are doing this for just the benefit. You guys don't make any money, and you take a lot of flack on every single decision you ever make. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening. Jeremy Schliga, 4932 Highland Avenue. Picture of my house is actually on the comprehensive plan, page 139, under the heading of community investment and cooperation. I want to start by saying thank you to all 6 committee folks for coming out to our property and looking over the development with us. I also want to thank staff, the builder, Mr. Berry, the architects for finally calling out the building setback issue and the development of the southern border that we have been talking about. As noted by the petitioner, when determining compliance with the comprehensive plan places the subject site within the downtown functional sub-area downtown transition. Although it is zone DB, downtown business, it is in the transition area. This area should be understood as transition between more intensive use of the downtown core and downtown edge into the neighborhood that surrounds the downtown area. Downtown transition area should buffer nearby residential areas from taller and denser developments and should consist of buildings that are smaller than what is found in the core and edge sub-areas. This sub-area should be denser compared to the surrounding neighborhoods outside the downtown, but should be respectful of the height surrounding the neighborhoods. The build from this should be consistent with the trans-oriented development. I would find that this is probably the only part of the comprehensive plan that this actually meets. Also of note, 65% of the border of this development is on residential property. The majority of this development borders residential property. The comprehensive plan also identifies that retail usage should not be encouraged in the downtown transition area and that commercial services that generate frequent customers should not be encouraged in the downtown transitional area. I would suggest that a restaurant goes against this as well. The petitioner is seeking to rezone the properties to get a special use and a PUD overlay designation for multifamily housing on the grounds that the proposed development provides housing variety. That variety is 21 units of intended for a 55-year-old and above community, but ultimately there's no requirement that he fulfill that substandard. In addition to the ordinance for rezoning that states the following factors should be considered in rezoning. 1, the existing use of the zoning of nearby property, which again, 65% of the existing residential is residence. The extent to which the particular zoning restrictions affect property values. The extent to which any loss in property value is offset by an increase in public health, safety, and welfare. An apartment building, I see, would do none of the 3. We'd argue that it wasn't without extreme community advocacy that the existing use and zoning of nearby property was even acknowledged, much less considered or accommodated. And I don't think that any of the uses were consulted about the loss of the property value, as Joe mentioned about an offer already being rescinded for one of the properties that borders this development. Nowhere tonight either did the petitioner describe the outdoor dining portion of his petition. One key portion of this development is the space of outdoor dining behind the proposed restaurant that butts up to residential properties. My property, the resident's property. Though we recognize that there have been significant modifications to this plan, including limiting the hours to 9 p.m. and increasing the fence height, the current ordinances for outdoor dining simply are not written with the idea of having a restaurant behind or abutting residential properties. The ordinance currently allows for 8 months of outdoor dining from March through September with outdoor entertainment. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and again, this is abutting private property. Nowhere else is that substantial here in Downers Grove. It's not at any other restaurant. Not only is there no precedent for this, Chairman Rickard of the Planning Commission also noted in regards to the Popeyes petition, quote, the setback is intended for the activity. In that case, it was cars idling, windows down with radios, and people talking in their vehicles. In this case, we're talking about music, people talking over the music, dishes and glassware clanking, all right next to residential properties for 8 months out of the year until 9 p.m. Earlier this year, Council passed revisions to the outdoor dining program specific for downtown restaurants that supports restaurants' use of public sidewalk and even on-street dining with barricades at a minimal fee. As evidenced by Foxtail, Another Round, and others in the downtown corridor, we also feel this development should follow suit. We feel that the zoning restrictions do not, well, we also know that the zoning restrictions do not differentiate between above and below grade. So when we're talking about the exceptions that he needs for the parking garage, there's nothing in the statutes or the zoning restrictions talking about the fact that it is above or below grade. It's a moot point. The petitioner is asking for a special use PUD overlay for the rezoning and also zoning exceptions in order to build this development. The height of this building does not take into account the heights of the surrounding buildings and is looking to have outdoor restaurant seating backing up residents. While we in the community are not against development, we are actually for it, as long as it fits the needs of the community and abides by the zoning restrictions. If this was being built abutting your property with the zoning changes and exceptions needed for it to happen, I don't believe you would pass this petition. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening. My name is Ian Ogden, and I'll keep my remarks brief if I can. So, I know there's been a lot said about zoning. I'm not going to talk about zoning, but I'm going to talk about context. So if you look at this building, you look at how big it is, you look at the style of the building, I think that you need, before you pass this, before you pass this thing, I think it would be really good to make sure that it fits the context stylistically, size-wise, of the surrounding area, and I don't think you could argue that it does that. So I think that would be a really important consideration here for this particular project. Whether that means changing the style of the building, change the architectural look, or not doing it at all, I think that needs to be an important consideration before you pass it and allow this to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Others?
I'm Janet Winningham. I live on Washington Street, so I'm not close to it. Well, I suspect if there's entertainment, I'll be hearing it. But I thoroughly appreciate what the neighbors have said. I oppose the development for different reasons, or more embellished reasons, and less of my property values I don't think are going to be hurt. But the development plan that was put in place years ago was based on assumptions. Those assumptions should be reviewed in the context of historical experience, and my concerns have to do with how these developments are being integrated into the community. Primarily parking for me. The parking ratios that are required as minimums by most consultants are, in my view, too low. There's not enough parking. The fact is that suburban dwellers own cars. 2 people in a family will own cars. You don't have enough parking in this development or any of the other developments that have gone up lately. We have many buildings, many units that are coming online, and we don't have any experience about what that density is going to do to our quality of life and ability to move around downtown. And so I think that there should be some pause as to how many multifamily units are developed until we get those absorbed into the community. The parking for the restaurant has been mentioned. Where are these people going to park? And where the folks who don't get parking spaces for their units, enough two per unit or whatever, where are they going to park? They're going to park on the street. And we already have the restaurant stuff downtown. I mean, I call it squatters' rights. Assume that absorb parking that is not fair to other businesses downtown or other people who need parking, because they just, we need to go back to pre-pandemic seating in the restaurants, in my opinion. But the parking is a problem. The look, and I appreciate the comment about the look of the building. It is an interesting building. but it is not, in my opinion, within the context or designs of the warm brick of the next door units. The downtown units are all nicely inviting and warm. This is very kind of industrial looking to me, and I don't think it's particularly inviting as a residential area. And that's my opinion. I like it in another context, but not here, not where it is. So I think it's a mistake to allow this project to go forward at this time. For a lot of the reasons that were said before, and I'd like to see how the development of all these units in the community affect our parking, our traffic, our usage of the space that we have. And I'm opposed to it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Others on this agenda item?
Good evening, council members. My name is Joe Anderson. I live on Highland. I have just 2 points. First off, the precedents that's come up before about these setbacks. If I came to you and asked to allow me to build my basement to my lot line so I could have more space, what would you say? You'd probably say, no, you have to live by the setbacks and build that foundation to exactly what the code says. Here they're asking to build the underground parking to within 3 feet of the lot line. Is that the precedence you want to set, that underground parking doesn't count? Yes, piping and sewers may be an underground utility, but when do we start expanding our buildings to the lot lines? So I urge you to consider that. And then lastly, traffic comes up a lot. If you haven't looked at the traffic study, I urge you to study that. I have, and some interesting things you may want to consider when you read it. First off, this was done on one day in the middle of COVID, a COVID spike actually in May 11th, and I think it was just for that day, on a Tuesday, which is always historically the lowest day of the week for traffic, and their estimate says it was 6,000 or 6,100 cars per day. The data from the Dupage County Traffic Center did a study in 2010, and they showed 21,000 back then. So I think there's a huge disconnect that was never resolved, never answered. I brought this up at the Planning Commission meeting, and it was not addressed. So I urge you, before you decide, to consider that, and how many more cars can we handle to try to get across the tracks, and how much does that slow down ambulance response time when the cars are backed up from the tracks to Prairie and going back the other way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any others on this agenda item?
Stephanie Lucas, 4925 Highland Avenue. I'm going to first ask for your forgiveness if I'm being redundant. Many of my neighbors and fellow residents have spoken so eloquently, and I feel like they've really covered very well a lot of the issues that we have with this development. So if anything else, please just kind of accept this as another citizen saying, no, this is not appropriate for our neighborhood. The fact that this building literally does not physically fit within the confines of the land it's being built on is of huge concern to me. As another neighbor pointed out, the difference between above and below grade, I don't see how having a basement put in, basement underground parking, with the border of it 3 feet from a property line, how that's not going to encroach on a neighbor's property. I don't know how buildings get built like that and still maintain that 3 feet of space when you allow for backfill, the molds. Forgive me for not knowing the technical detail, the technical words for all of those things. I also have huge concerns about the impact of that as well on our stormwater management. If you look at the LPDA map for this neighborhood, pretty much the entire neighboring block, the 4900 block of Highland and Bryan, the majority of it is LPDA, and it wraps around Rogers Street and comes back up Main just a little. So a nice chunk of the bottom of this block, downhill from this block, is LPDA. I can't imagine this not massively impacting that area. A lot of my neighbors and fellow residents have been, I feel like they were reading my mind when they were talking about very specific things that are within the building codes and the considerations for zoning amendments. Right now, the thing though that is really rubbing me the wrong way was hearing Mr. Barry say, one of the reasons he wants to build this building is so that families can stay in Downers Grove. Yeah, I would like to stay in Downers Grove. I would like to stay in my house, in my neighborhood. But watching this happen to my neighbors and what it's doing to our neighborhood, it could potentially do to our neighborhood, I don't feel like that's fair to the families that are already there. One of our neighbors talked about the definition of transition and what that means. To prevent intensive downtown development from encroaching into stable residential areas. Over half of the residents on this block have lived there for over 20 years. Pretty much everybody on the block has put expensive time, love, and care into restoring and maintaining these properties. But this is going to encroach on all of that work on this stable block. For those of us that are newer, that's why we moved there, and we don't want to see that ruined.
Marshall Schmidt, 4923 Sealy. I'm not a neighbor or in the area, and I think the people who have spoken tonight have spoken eloquently about the details and the detail issues. I want to address something a little broader. Over the last year, I've attended a lot of these village council meetings, and the councils face some very difficult issues. The Longfellow property, the antenna tower, and now this. And what I want you to think about is the vision that each of you has for this village. What do you want this village to look like? With regard to both the Longfellow and the antenna issues, the arguments were, oh, we have no choice. The zoning ordinance means this. The antenna is necessary. It has to be this high. We have no choice. You have a choice on this issue. You are being asked to grant variances and to overlay a PUD on top of the zoning map. This is the power that you are given to shape the vision of this village. And when you walk near this property, you realize that this building, if it goes where it is planned to go, will destroy the neighborhood. Okay? It will radically change the feel of the neighborhood. It will undermine the integrity of the neighborhood. It will be one further step in the continued overbuilding of this village. And if that's the vision that you have for this village, that development has to be done at all costs, including the cost of our stable, friendly neighborhoods, then that's the statement you'll be making. And so when you look at what powers this council has, it needs to look at what the evidence is as to what this development will do to the neighborhood. Overall, We can talk about setbacks and details of underground parking lots next to property lines till we're blue in the face. But if you take one walk in this neighborhood and you take a step back and you ask yourself, does this building make sense in this neighborhood? The answer has to be no, unless for some reason you feel that you have to bend over backwards to cater to developers. People come to this place because of what it is. And you are charged with preserving that and balancing it. I'm not saying all development is bad and that we shouldn't develop this village, because we need to. We need to continue to grow. But it needs to be done in a rational way that makes sense. And the bottom line is that this building, in that place, does not make sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any others on this subject? Okay. We will take a pause and move to the council then. Anyone have any comments or questions from the council? Anyone? Yeah. Leslie, go ahead.
Sure. I'm taking quite a bit of a look at this. I will start off by saying that this is zoned in downtown business, so at some point something is going to go in there. Whether or not this is the right move, we will see. But I don't think there's a way around the concerns of parking, because no matter what goes in here, whether it be a restaurant, apartment, or office building, we are going to struggle with the fact that St. Joe's is just north of that. And realistically, if it were an office building, we're going to struggle even more with parking and traffic, because that coming and going is going to be at the same time. So I think regardless, that's going to be a larger issue. That's not going to be necessarily specific to this development. However, I do still have a few issues with the way things currently are. I do appreciate the developer's willingness to kind of go back and forth and to make some concessions. I could definitely accept an underground setback a little bit easier than I can accept an above ground setback. My only question, and you probably don't have this answer now, is considering the underground setbacks and knowing that there are quite a few boundary trees that are in that area, do we have any expectation that they will be impacted by the work that's going to be done with that parking garage? And is there a plan to do a tree survey for that? I also did appreciate the fact that those windows and balconies were removed from the southern portion, but I do still have a concern with the fourth floor balconies on the back half, because again, it can be invasive. I know that some folks spoke about the light, but I can tell you that even in a neighborhood that's nowhere near business, a neighbor can put up a very bright light on the top of their house and still be pretty impactful in the back of your house. So it's not as much the light as what I understand is kind of the balconies and people being outside. So if we could take a look at those, that would be helpful. And honestly, I don't know that I can vote yes on anything that has the dining in the back. It's just a huge concern of mine. I understand that folks bought with downtown business in their backyard, but I don't think anybody could have ever expected that we would have a patio that essentially backs up to someone's backyard. That really doesn't seem like a particularly enjoyable thing as a young family. I have, a daughter in first grade, and she goes to bed still at 7:15. We're, the early family, and that really would be just a concern for me, to have that much noise and congestion, even if it stops at 9. So those are some of the concerns that I still do have with this particular development. Again, I'm going to have concerns with regard to parking and traffic regardless of what goes here. And knowing that the times of day for an office building that might not need as many hearings as we've had still will be a concern for the neighborhood during school. But these are the ones with this particular petition that I have the largest concern with. The other question I do have is if we could go a little bit more into that stormwater, because I do know in some cases there might not have been any stormwater infrastructure built at the time that some of these older buildings were built. So I would like to hear a little bit more about kind of the plan for stormwater and what our expectations would be if it would mitigate some of the issues or not. So that's kind of where I stand as of now. Thank you.
Thanks. So hang on one second, Rich. So Dave, I'm assuming you're scribing over there.
That's correct,
When we
Mayor.
get done here, if you plan on a little recap of what you heard, because I'm sure there's additional questions we won't answer tonight that we'll have to get through.
Will do.
Okay. Rich?
First of all, I have some questions for staff. I'd like you to explain a PUD, because there seems to be some misunderstanding about the PUD changing the underlying zoning. Second question is, do deviations in PUDs create a precedent? Also, if we could go into more detail regarding our sound ordinance and how we check for that. In addition, the lighting requirements, outside lighting requirements. And I think there's been some confusion about special use, so I'd like to get a more thorough explanation of that. And then the stormwater requirements. A lot of people raised those concerns in emails to me and other council members. And I do have two questions for the petitioner. Would you be willing to root prune the large trees? And secondly, would you be willing to install sound absorbing panels to the 8-foot-high fence?
Adam, you can get back to us on those. You don't necessarily have to answer them tonight. If you have answers, that's fine, but this process is likely going to take a couple of rounds of getting through all these questions. So we'll need to have that answered for everybody, but...
And Commissioner, in the same manner, several questions. We're happy to answer those. Given the type and number of them, we can, if it's all right with the council, we'll get back to you next week with written answers on all those.
Great, thank you.
Nicole?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank the residents who invited us out. It's always beneficial to actually go to the site, walk the lay of the land, and get a better idea of what is going on. I agree and second a lot of what Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit already said, so I don't want to be repetitive. I do just want to mention that there are some cases where our hands are a bit more tied due to our zoning, due to our comp plan. I don't feel like that is the case here, and so I want to make sure that I'm looking at this very closely and that I'm putting myself in the shoes of the residents in that area. I think that's incredibly important. I have some concerns about this. I actually want to go pull our comp plan and read word for word what's in there, which I've done in the past and actually read aloud at meetings. But right now I am a bit undecided on this, and I look forward to staff answering some of those questions that have already been brought up. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dan.
I just had one question for staff. A couple of residents brought up that this area might be downtown transition. Is that the case?
No, the zoning of the property is downtown business. If you read back and how we got from the comp plan to the maintenance of the current zoning, their sub-area plan used the word downtown transition, as the residents earlier mentioned. So yes, I think it's an accurate description that at one point, part of the sub-areas that were mentioned in the comp plan used the word transition in this area. Then it was discussed in detail at many meetings by a previous council, and the council at that time directed to keep the zoning downtown business.
Okay. And then just another question to add to the developers list. Was there any consideration in the location, to move the location of the outdoor dining, or was that not possible because of the setbacks?
We'll get that answered as well from the petitioner. From the staff perspective, if a restaurant were to go in here, whether part of this development or part of another by right development, the downtown outdoor dining program would be available to it, which is a front yard, sidewalk, and in the parking spaces program that we're all familiar with. So outdoor dining could go as part of that program in the front of the building on Main Street.
Anything else, Danny?
No, that's it.
Chris?
Yeah, I too don't want to repeat, agree with a lot of what Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit had mentioned. I do think it's important to mention there's been a lot of iterations from the developer, which we appreciate. Let us not forget, also a resident here in Downers Grove. I share a lot of the same issues with the certainly the tree line, or the tree, as well as some of the outdoor, which is dining, which is probably my biggest stick here. One question that I did have, I just want to make sure I understand, the zoning changes that happened in 2005, that was when it was changed to DB, and it hasn't changed since then. So for the last 17 years, this property has been DB.
That's correct.
Okay, the other dates here are just sort of, there was rounds of comprehensive plan discussion, but no action was changed, nothing made to look at this area any differently.
The area was looked at several times during that process,
Sure.
and the decision was to not change the
Not to change it, okay. Look, I think one of the things that was made clear to me tonight that I just don't think I realize is that this is, unless I'm mistaken, so maybe a question, is there any other section that of down DB that doesn't have a buffer of transitional?
So the question is there any other location in the downtown where a DB backs up to the same zoning district in question here?
Correct.
We will find out.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I mean, just looking at the overlay, it now stands out as a pretty unique area, so close to residential. So while I think I agree with the idea of this being a place where we could develop a building like this, its location and proximity to residential does make that a little trickier decision. So while I'm not going to go on record as to where I completely sit right now, I do think there are some considerations we have to think about as it pertains to this specific area. And let's see if there was anything else in there. And I guess the only other question maybe for the developer would be a potential of no balconies at all in the back, if that was looked at and a possibility. I think that's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? I have a couple of additional questions too. Or just comments, I guess. One thing about the value of a PUD is it does give us some additional opportunities to exercise some control and oversight into what goes on. There is an element of existing zoned rights for this property. So if somebody were to choose to build within the setbacks, for instance, and chose not to make it residential, for instance, they could come with a much bigger building, a much taller building, and not require approval. So that's something to keep in mind. There are existing zoning rights that what we're doing is trying to balance, and honestly there's some value to the village and value to all of us that are concerned, whether it be about setbacks or parking or uses. There's some value in the PUD because it frankly gives us some more authority we might not otherwise have. That's an important thing to keep in mind. If this were just developed as a commercial use in the DB, I guess I'd like to know whether we would have any real constraint authority on height. You know, if somebody could go with a setback consistent commercial only, in other words, not asking for the residential special use. I think that opens up a whole can of worms that it'd be good for us to keep in mind as we're trying to evaluate opportunities before us and potential possible outcomes. The stormwater thing is always a question, and I think like many other developments, there's a chance, given what's there right now, that this results in a net improvement. So if there's more information that we could get on that, It would certainly help everybody up here feel good about decisions. And then I guess one thing just to keep in mind about parking, the parking, whether the 1.4 is the right mix for residential or not, it's a whole, another conversation. But if a building wasn't being used as residential, its parking requirements are pretty light in the downtown. Everybody needs to sort of keep that in mind. The existing uses downtown don't have parking on site for their commercial activities. They just don't. The only one that really does is the library. So whether it's Anderson's Books, or it's Ballydoyle, or it's Bar Cheeto, or it's the bank, there's not really parking on site for their entire usages. So it's just something to keep in mind. I know it's a constant concern, but it's pretty normal in any downtown, whether it's ours or any other downtown, to not actually be parking all of the users. We've had this conversation up here, particularly as it relates to the new restaurants downtown and those changes in uses. There's nowhere near enough parking for anybody that's there today. It's just not. And I'm not sure that that's a true detriment. So just another parking comment. Some editorial that doesn't mean anything for the moment because we're not deciding anything, but for perspective on stuff, I think it's important to keep that in mind. Do you want to recap the questions you've got?
Sure. We've heard requests for more information both from the petitioner and of staff on several issues, including boundary trees, outdoor dining, location and design of balconies, stormwater, and several questions related to zoning and particular applications of particular tools in the zoning ordinance, noise regulations, and light regulations. Well, with that, if that's a proper recap, what we'd like to do is go back, work with the petitioner, and prepare answers, so both petitioner answers and staff answers, and bring this back at a future meeting for further discussion.
I think that's the next step here, yeah. Everybody okay with that process? Mm-hmm. And then, certainly if something else comes to mind, get it out there and get it to Dave so that everybody's got the same information in terms of questions and answers.
There's several people obviously very interested in this proceeding, so we just encourage people to check our village website every Friday afternoon that precedes a council meeting. Look under this week's meetings and just check all aspects there. And of course, if anybody has any questions, they can give village staff a call, Jason Zawilla, anybody in community development, Stan Popovich, or just call the manager's office. We'll keep everybody informed as to the process to make sure everybody can continue to participate.
And one last thing, as I mentioned before with the public comments, I'm sure as folks sit here and they hear us and they hear each other things come into mind. So please, when you leave here tonight, don't hesitate to fire off another email to us. Keep us in the loop in what's come into your head and what you're thinking about or what else has come up. I don't know where this lands, but we certainly want all the input. Okay.
The next item on the first reading agenda is consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of our Municipal Code. This is the chapter regarding stormwater. I would describe this as a housekeeping code amendment that is required to match recent changes to the Dupage County Stormwater Ordinance regarding mobile home parks. There would be no impact to the village of Downers Grove as there are no such land uses in our village, so housekeeping amendment. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any comments or questions from the audience on stormwater regulations for mobile home parks? Come on, that's exciting, right? Council comments or questions?
That ends our first reading, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
And no further manager's report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. 4 items to present tonight. The first is an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance to designate the property at 4915, 4919, and 4923 Main Street as Plan Unit Development Number 67. An ordinance rezoning certain property located at 4915, 4919, 4923 Main Street. And an ordinance authorizing a special use for that same property. And also the ordinance amending Chapter 26. That is all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We're coming up down to item 10, public comments. Just as a reminder, this is an opportunity to address comments to the council on any items not covered on either an active or first reading agenda. So if there's folks with comments for us not on an agenda item, please come on down to the podium.
Hello, my name's Jim Wool. I live across the street from the Carney family. This is the family that has been decorating their front yard with a beautiful Christmas display for at least 10 years. The neighborhood looks forward to the Carney family Christmas display because it brings much Christmas cheer and joy. Well, Christmas in 2020, the year of the COVID lockdowns, the Carneys added a canopy of Christmas lights over the sidewalk. This new display was received with much joy and excitement. Children would, with a child's excitement, run under the beautiful canopy of lights. Parents would video their children as they ran under the canopy of Christmas lights. Witnessing these wonderful Christmas scenes brought back the much-needed cheer during COVID. Well, these videos hit social media, and other families from Downers Grove and beyond would come to 4th Street. At night, it was not unusual to see a parade of cars slowing down to look on in wonderment at the Carney Christmas display. The families would then park their cars, and excited children would exit the cars and run up and down under the canopy of lights. People were once again enjoying life, enjoying the Christmas season, and were reminded why we celebrate Christmas. And then it happened. Bob and this town council told the Carneys to take down their canopy of Christmas lights or face fines. Fines that would be assessed on a daily basis. The neighbors of 4th Street were shocked. We inquired why Bob and the town council wanted the Carney Christmas light display taken down. All of you stated that the Christmas display impedes the public use of the sidewalk. Are you kidding? Let's review the display. The canopy was more than 8 feet in height. There were no wires, cords, or decorations on the sidewalk. So no one's use of the sidewalk was impeded. You also stated that the person who complained, and I quote, "The person was uncomfortable walking under someone else's decorations." Really? When has it become your responsibility to ensure the comfort of the residents of Downers Grove? This person could have simply crossed the street and used the sidewalk on the other side of 4th Street. Is this the death of common sense? Bob, in the email to the neighbors of 4th Street, you also said neighborhoods change over time, and thus do expectations and opinions about what's acceptable and what is not. So Christmas lights over a sidewalk is unacceptable, but a drag queen performing in the Downers Grove Public Library for children is acceptable? In the spring of 2021 and 2022, the restaurants in Downers Grove, downtown, were given permission by the mayor and town council to set up dining tables on the sidewalk and streets of the downtown. This certainly impeded the use of the sidewalks and streets, not to mention that it is dangerous for cars to be traveling down streets where people are dining. Restaurants had extension cords snaked along the sidewalks so they could light their outdoor eating area. That certainly was not safe. Remember, the Carney Christmas display in no way impeded the use of the sidewalk, let alone the street. Despite this, Bob and the council, you told the Carney family to remove their Christmas display, but you gave the restaurants the green light to impede the use of the sidewalks and streets. It was wonderful to see how many people enjoyed the Carney family's festive Christmas display. Mayor, this is not a question of what is acceptable. It is what has always existed. Those few town cranks, such as Mr. Potter in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, who, unfortunately, finds it necessary to take away the joy and stamp out acts of kindness and generosity. Where are the George Baileys on our village council? Where are the council members and mayor who will politely tell a crank to have some Christmas cheer and allow people to enjoy this wonderful Christmas display? The Carney family's Christmas display is a beautiful visual of the Christmas spirit. But you folks wrecked that. Thank you.
Thank you. Others on subjects not on tonight's agenda?
For the record, I'll repeat, I'm Robin Tryloff, and I've been a Downers Grove resident for more than 30 years. Today is National Coming Out Day. It's celebrated in all 50 states. Like so many specially designated days, weeks, and months, it is used to shine a light on one aspect of the American family. On this day, we proclaim our support, respect, and love for our neighbors, co-workers, family members, friends, and leaders who identify as LGBTQ+. And on National Coming Out Day, when many people who so identify will come out about their sexuality, we reinforce our commitment to ensuring that our community is a safe space where every LGBTQ+ person is free to live their life openly with their equal rights guaranteed and without fear of being a target of hate, violence, or discrimination. Which brings me to the recent attacks on the Downers Grove Public Library. As a resident, taxpayer, and devoted library patron, I applaud our Library Board of Trustees and outstanding professional staff for standing strong for professional ideals, community needs, and intellectual freedom. I deplore the recent intolerance, hate speech, and threats of violence against the library. It's the library's role to identify emerging trends relevant to our community. Article 1 of the Library Bill of Rights states, quote, "Library resources should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people of the community the library serves. Materials should not be excluded because of the origin, background, or views of those contributing to their creation. A diverse collection should contain content by and about a wide variety of people and cultures to authentically reflect a variety of ideas, information, stories, and experiences." Our library does this through its commitment to equity, that is, by extending its work to deliberate and intentional efforts to ensure all community members have the resources they need. These needs can vary by race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identification, socioeconomic status, physical ability, and other considerations. By law, public libraries cannot discriminate in the provision of access to books, media, or programming. As a trusted, neutral, safe space, the library is an ideal institution to lead dialogue and deliberation efforts for difficult topics in our community and should be respected as such. The library has the First Amendment right to speak in its own voice as a public agency about important matters. The library can exercise its prerogative to convey strong messaging that counters messages of bias, hatred, and discrimination. Such messaging can be proactive, affirmative, and ongoing, as well as a reaction to an incident of hateful conduct or speech. Our library can and often does mount prominent signage throughout the library announcing its support for equality, diversity, and inclusion, and its belief in the human dignity of all persons, especially those in marginalized communities. Which brings me back to National Coming Out Day. Drag Queen Bingo was scheduled for today, National Coming Out Day, at the library for interested teens. Its cancellation didn't just deprive these young people of an activity in a safe space to have fun. The intolerance, hate speech, and threats of violence against the library that caused its cancellation sent a message to those who plan to attend, others in our LGBTQ+ community, and those of us, like me, who support the LGBT community, that our community still struggles in its efforts to be a safe space where every LGBTQ+ person is free to live their life openly, with their equal rights guaranteed, without fear of being a target of hate, violence, or discrimination. We must do better.
Thank you. Others?
Hi, my name is Alex. Eventually I'll learn. You guys got to be patient with me because this is the first time I actually read off something. I was involved in an incident at the community kitchen the other day. Somebody under the influence was alarming to me and other people, and I was witnessing some children that were witnessing. I called the police. This person that's extremely delusional and under influence of probably multiple things, he called the police on himself. 7 police cars showed up, and they refused. And I videotaped it if anybody's interested. I cussed a few times, I didn't take minutes, sorry. But they refused to arrest him. They refused to take him in custody. And they told me to mind my own business. Okay? That's fine. I'm not a police officer, but I do appreciate your community. But that brings me to what I'm about to read to you right now. Absolutely, you have more important things to care about your health as you do. I also need to consider other people like blank, I can't mention any names, and his neighbors and acting out in public. Okay, I don't care to have anybody act out in public and alarm the community. I go to community kitchen still sometimes. Okay, a lot less now because I'm starting to make some money. But then, to make matters worse, this is a recovering drug addict sending me this message. Okay, the person then says to make them want to feel more comfortable to helping the public, assisting where families can't afford to eat, or homes. So basically, in your community, if you have somebody acting out, you don't keep on patting him and say he's got a problem. You fight an ordinance and you stop it. You don't have 7 police officers on the scene saying, well, we're defusing the situation because this particular individual done this about 5 times now. Okay? Sorry about the editorial. Okay? We have to work together. This is a recovered drug addict. We have to work together as a community to keep our town and country safe away from especially children, people with disabilities, and to be more aware of the surroundings and no domestic violence. It makes people not feel safe, not to mention acting suspicious and very uncomfortable for everyone. I don't want, I'm right. I am sorry, but my kids need their mother to be rested, healthy, and safe. So it's not a good idea to leave when I feel safe where she is right now, or basically where she didn't feel safe in the community because you're police officers. And I apologize because I acted up too, because I get really emotional sometimes, which you guys witnessed, when I feel something is wrong. She's got the risk of losing her kids, and she's trying to turn her life around. But at the same time, we have people out there that just don't care about acting up. They don't care if that community kitchen is closed or open. They don't care about the 62, 70-year-old old lady or couple that needs a meal maybe once a week, because all they care about is their drug, their alcohol. There's a two-edged sword to everything, pros and cons. What I'm asking is the city council to consider having a communications line open between the police department, okay, and some of the people that are actually out on the street. You can't let one individual ruin the community kitchen for everyone, because it's a wonderful thing and it's caring. And since I first got here and got activated, God, I'm turning into an activist. I never wanted to do that before. The first time I brought up feeding at the train station over 2 years ago. This is something that needs to be looked at, investigated. Even Mr. Mayor, we have a police department. If you have somebody sitting there during the community kitchen instead of some squad showing up afterwards, then I don't think some of these individuals that have problems will act up. Have a nice evening. And anybody want to look at videotape? I'm sure you can figure out everything.
Others?
Hi, my name is Preston Straub. I've been here a lot of times. I've talked about the situation with our condominiums on the south side of town. I just wanted to say that, wow, taking down Christmas lights because somebody's uncomfortable, and I've been coming here because I'm uncomfortable with the village ordinance, trying to get somebody's attention. And I talked to Joshua today, and he told me, well, there's only one route for you to go, and that's through our legal department. So I just want to say as a public comment that I find that like a little difficult. I mean, I'm not really sure what's happening and what we need to do to get a council or somebody in the village to say, hey, wait a minute, what's your concern? Yeah, okay, so we'll look at it. I've tried to have it put on the agenda. I can't. And I just want to say, I mean, these are really seriously, I think, it's not a joke, constitutional concerns. And so with that, I want to say that one of the things I'm troubled with is you pledge allegiance to that flag for which it stands for the Constitution of the United States of America. And when a Downers Grove citizen has concerns over some of your ordinances, I think there should be an avenue other than the attorney's office that we should be able to travel to somehow, either to submit a letter to you or something. That's all I want to say. Have a good night.
Others? Okay. Mayor's report. It's hard to sit up here and be the Scrooge. It really is. But sometimes you got to try, and I guess you got to try and clear the air and make things a little clearer than what is sometimes said. Preston, you have been here a lot. No doubt about that. Everybody that watches knows that. But the avenue that Preston's looking for has been fully traveled. The fact of the matter is, both the technical question, should they comply with village ordinances for fire suppression at their condo building or not, and should there be an appeal process within the village structure or not, has been adjudicated twice. It's been through the courts twice. Yes, there is a vehicle, there is an avenue. For everybody who's got a problem with the village, it starts internally typically and often ends in the courts. But it's not like somebody is not getting their day or finding their avenue. This issue has been taken up and settled twice in the courts. You cannot then say, after the courts have ruled against you, I don't like that answer. Would somebody at the village please give me some other kind of hearing? Because I'd just like to talk about it some more. That's not the way it works. One of the things we have to do, and this kind of goes to this Christmas lights conversation, is we do try and keep enforcement of our ordinances for a variety of reasons. As it relates to the idea of should a multi-person dwelling facility comply with village fire codes, I don't. Maybe you'll find a council that doesn't think so. I think they should. And councils before this one think they should, because this has been going on for quite some time, a couple of years. So it's been through the courts, so we can have this conversation every week because people are certainly free to come here and say what they want. That's part of the process. But the idea that there is no avenue or someone's not being listened to, I don't know what to do with that except to say it's factually not the case. The second thing is this Christmas light thing. It's a pretty simple concept, guys. When was the last time the village went and just made somebody take down Christmas lights because they were, the anti-George Bailey? We had a situation where somebody decided to put a display over a sidewalk. Why is that different than downtown restaurants? Because downtown restaurants enter into a contract that includes insurance coverage, it includes some standards. Might there have been an extension cord? Sure, could have been, just like there's anyone in this room who probably has an ordinance violation. But we've also taken our efforts to clear those up. There is a big difference between 18,000 individual residential parcels just saying, I happen to want to decorate a certain way in the public area, and downtown restaurants entering into a contract and having certain insurance coverages to operate on public property. I don't know what to say. We've had a couple of such situations. That Christmas light isn't the only one. There was a Halloween one I'm aware of that was done that way too. But it's very similar, frankly, to what Preston was talking about. We have some village codes and we have some village ordinances. And one of the things that's really important to us, it's been important to this council and it's important, I hope, to every council in the future, is that we apply the law consistently. If somebody would like to ask this council to consider changing the law to not require multifamily dwellings to comply with our fire code, we'd certainly hear that. Not likely, but we'd certainly hear it. So that's what we're doing, and that's the short story on those two things. Probably already too long. If anybody wants more details, I'm certainly happy to get into them. Not likely to change the way we act in those two situations. That was not fun. Anybody else in the council? We'll start with Rich.
Yeah, one report, Mayor. The Downers Grove Historical Society is honoring Edward Bunting Jr. as the 2022 Historian of the Year. There will be a ceremony celebrating him on Saturday, October 8th at 1 p.m. at the Lincoln Center. And if you are interested, send an email to info@downersgrovehistory.org. That's info@downersgrovehistory.org. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Leslie?
Yeah, so in addition to Night at the Firehouse tomorrow night, there is also a community mental health forum that Grit 2 is hosting at the Downers Grove Public Library. It's tomorrow from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. I think it's specifically kind of geared towards parents and teens, from what I understand. So check that out if you're interested. You can go to grit2.org. And I do also want to wish everyone a very happy National Coming Out Day. I'm sorry to those teens who wanted to attend Drag Queen Bingo at the Downers Grove Public Library, and I'm heartbroken that we could not ensure your safety. But know that I am doing everything I can to support you and create a more empathetic, safe place of belonging here in Downers Grove. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Nicole?
I have no report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Danny?
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I just want to add a little more context to the Grit 2 event, which is, Commissioner Sadowski, if you get mentioned, that is tomorrow night at 6:30 at the Downers Grove Public Library. This will be the first of its kind forum focused on teen mental health. Grit 2 is a Downers Grove-based nonprofit that focuses on providing mental health resources and support for teens and their parents, and they're inviting all community members to attend. The title of it is called Let's Start Talking, and the idea is to discuss and understand the state of youth's mental wellness, to create awareness of local resources, to share expert strategies and tips, and to hear community concerns and ideas and opportunities. The forum will consist of a panel discussion, which starts at 6:30. This will focus on the state of our youth's mental health, some recommendations, and a Q&A session. Panelists include administration from both high schools, counselors from Herrick Middle School, as well as representatives from the Dupage County Health Department's Youth and Family Services, as well as Linden Oaks. At 7:30, there will be a resource fair. There'll be information tables of local organizations from all different helpful groups, including NAMI Dupage, Linden Oaks, Indian Boundary, YMCA, LE Mental Health, Youth Outlook, Positive, Therapy Troop, and a lot more. As it was mentioned, you can register for this event at www.grit2.org, and I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. We would call for a motion to adjourn, but we are going to go to executive session tonight. Is there a motion concerning that?
Mayor, I move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C3 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the selection of a person to fill a public office which the Village Council is given power to appoint under law or ordinance.
Second.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Colavani?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That motion passes. We are going to move to closed session. We will not be returning out here. Thank you all, and good night.